Welcome to Your Personal Power Pod, a podcast about aligning yourself with the life you want. And here are your hosts, Sandy Abel and Shannon Young.
Shannon, what's going on in your world?
Hi, Sandy. I'm wrestling with my brain this morning. It's not working the way I want it to be working. How are you?
I can relate to that, which is why we are talking about what our topic today is, which is how do you think?
So we've talked about this before, not necessarily about right brain versus left brain, but about how your brain works better at certain times of day than mine does. So picking a time to record the podcast was kind of a thing because your brain works better in the morning and my brain works better in the evening. I think we would have a totally different podcast if we recorded at a different time of day.
Well, maybe we should try that. Maybe we should do evening podcasts and see how it goes.
We'll just experiment.
Because just so our listeners know, we usually record in the morning because that's when our time schedules work better that way too. But still.
That's true. I would like to record at midnight, but you probably wouldn't be functioning well.
No, that would not be working. You'd be on your own. Which would be great. You would do a great podcast on your own.
But it would be much less well-informed than it is now.
You're so funny. So we are talking today about being left-brained or right-brained. Left-brained people are usually logical, analytical, detail-oriented. Right-brained people are creative, intuitive, big-picture thinkers. People like to put people in boxes and say, oh, you're left brain or you're right brain. But we're all really both of these to varying degrees.
Yes, it sort of feels like the introvert-extrovert question.
Yes, right,
like
exactly.
You're all one or you're all the other, and whatever label you have defines everything about you, which is just not true.
Exactly. I strongly resist putting people in boxes, and these are boxes that people like to be stuck in. We do have tendencies to think one way or the other or function one way or the other, or a variety of ways, but you can't say that's all you're going to do.
So today we're looking at left brain thinking, right brain thinking, what that means for you, what you might be good at, how understanding which side of your brain is dominant can help you move through your life and make choices.
Yeah. If you're left-brained, you're usually really good with language and logic, analytical thinking, math, those kinds of things. Accountants are often left brain. And if you're right brained, you're into creativity, intuition. But the important thing is that both hemispheres work together in almost everything you do.
So is it kind of like dominant hand? Like I'm right-handed, you're left-handed, but we use both hands.
Yeah, as with most parts of our body, including the brain, they have to work together to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
If you are left-brained, you might enjoy planning and organizing, or critical thinking, problem solving, following structured procedures. And when you're right-brained, you're more creative, artistic. You might like design or music or writing. What are you, Shan? Are you left-brain, right-brain? Ambibrain, I just made that up.
I was going to ask, because there probably is a category that has both sides of the brain working fairly equally together. And I feel like I might be that because I love language. I love math. I almost majored in math until you were like, what are you going to do with that?
Sorry.
Well, it was a fair question because I was like, do math? You're like, great. How are you going to make money with that? I love math. I love lists and checking things off lists and love having a checklist to work by. But on the other hand, I love art. But I struggle a little bit more with allowing myself to be creative. You gave me an art book a long time ago called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. That was really eye-opening for me because I used to draw a lot. I'd get frustrated because things never looked the way I wanted them to look. And what that book basically says is stop drawing what you think you see and draw what you see, which is so much harder than it sounds if you're not fully right brain, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm probably more left brain. I don't draw as much as I used to. How about you? What do you think you are?
Definitely right-brained.
Yeah.
Numbers scramble in my brain. I have no patience for research or details. I like the big picture. I can do it. I can balance my checkbook and those kinds of things. I can do those things, but it does not come easily. Whereas right brain activities like writing, creating, writing podcasts, those kinds of things are real easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that. So whenever I'm confronted with a situation where there's a whole lot of organization, I find somebody else to do it because it's not my thing. Or numbers. That's why we have an accountant. Or, well, your dad is also incredibly, amazingly left brain, right brain. Architects have to do that. And he's an architect. They have to be incredibly creative and be able to visualize what it is that they're designing and all that. But then they have to be able to do the structural calculations and make sure that the thing doesn't fall down. Good architects are incredibly left brain, right brain. It's just fascinating to watch. And you're kind of like that too.
Maybe not to the depth that dad is. I think that's often the case. We tend to think about people who are really good at music as being right brain. But if you get really deep into music theory, then it starts to become a more left brain activity.
Yeah. They have to work together. You got to make your whole brain function for you. Understand which one comes easier and which one you might need some support around. An important thing is that your brain dominance can affect your relationships and how you communicate.
Oh boy, can it ever?
Would you like to talk about that?
I want to say there's a stereotype around men and women, and I just talk about my primary romantic relationship because that's the one I have, and what works for me is to be married to a man. But I am all about talking about feelings, and boy, is that not a thing he wants to do. And I don't know if that's a right brain, left brain thing, or if that's nature versus nurture thing, or if that's just a societal expectation thing. But it does really feel like when I'm talking about what's going on with me, I'm a lot more likely to use analogies, whereas I think he's a whole lot more likely to use specifics. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is he left brain or right brain?
Probably left brain, but that's a
Yeah.
guess. I mean, he's also supremely creative. So I don't know.
Well, left brain people prefer direct logical conversations.
Mm,
They want to solve the problems through rational discussion, and that sounds like what you just said.
yes.
And right brain people rely more on emotional and nonverbal cues, picking up on things like tone of voice or body language. So that could be a challenge in a relationship where one person is talking feelings and the other person is talking facts.
Yes, and feelings and logic don't go together.
Yeah. And it can create misunderstandings. As long as you learn to understand and work with the differences that you and your partner or your friend or your child or whoever have, it can make you really strong.
Yes, I think it all depends on how you look at it because it's really easy to say, I think this way, you think that way. So we essentially speak different languages. And that's just a barrier. You could also say together, the way we process the world creates a full picture. Whereas if I'm just dealing with emotions and you're just dealing with logic, then we each only have half of the picture.
Yes.
So if you can look at it like, okay, the way we approach the world together creates a complete view, and now we have more tools at our disposal. If you're open to that and to learning how the other person thinks, it can be really powerful. But if you just feel the barrier between you and focus on that, you're not going to go far.
Exactly. It's about understanding where each other's coming from, realizing nobody is trying to antagonize anybody else. You're probably both really trying to understand what the other person is saying, but you're coming from a different place because your brain functions in a different way. If you can acknowledge that and choose to collaborate and help each other move ahead together instead of saying, well, you're not listening, you're not paying attention. No, I really am, but this is what I'm getting and you're not hearing me. And if you can be aware that you each function differently, then you can start to figure out ways to function together. So your brain dominance really affects your relationships and how you communicate. And it could be that way. It could affect your communication at work too.
Absolutely. This is a big one because frequently workplaces require skills that fall into both categories, and not everybody's going to do both, but everybody has to work together.
Exactly. As long as you can understand what your strengths are and where your challenges are, then you can find ways to work with those in your job.
We talked about architects and how they kind of have to be able to do both. If you tend to be more left or right brain, what kinds of careers might you feel pulled by?
Well, left brain people are often engineering, like architecture, lawyers. It's all about precision. medicine, especially the technical fields like surgery or radiology. If you're more right-brained, you might be more into visual arts or music or marketing and advertising or counseling or teaching.
Oh, that's interesting.
How do you find that interesting?
Teaching, I think just because it seems to me like education might be more left brain, but it is definitely a creative field. The good teachers are the ones who get creative about presenting information.
Yes. You think back to when you were in school, who were the really fun teachers?
Hmm.
I always remember you and your brother had a math teacher,
Mr. Dedrick.
Mr. Dedrick. Yeah. We're outing him on our podcast. He was an awesome teacher. He was obviously very good at math, so he was very left brained, but he also was creative enough to keep your attention. I remember you guys telling me he would get so caught up in writing his numbers on the chalkboard that he would just go off the board and onto the wall and write around the room on the wall with his chalk.
Hmm.
And that was very creative of him because it made a huge impression on you folks. And his students still remember him to this day.
Yeah.
So he was a great balance of left and right brain.
I think a big part of that was that he loved what he did, and
Mhm.
that was contagious.
Yeah. Well, and you felt that he cared about you as a student and wanted to make sure that you would love what he was teaching you as much as he did.
Hmm. So, what I find interesting is that I've known people professionally, like meteorologists, who are
Yes.
very left brain, but then the hobbies that they choose to take up are very right brain. Cooking, painting, things that kind of balance out all the technical, math oriented information they deal with at work.
And they're very fortunate to be able to have that ability because we all have obviously a left brain and a right brain. For some people, one is very dominant, and for others, they work together pretty well. And it's important for everybody to be aware of what their dominance is and how to utilize that to make their life go the way they want it to go and their relationships go the way they want it to go. And also realize what they're not really good at and find ways to work with that so that they can continue to make things happen the way they want them.
Can you switch the dominant side of your brain with enough training?
Wow, now there's a good question. I have no clue.
I don't know why you would want to unless you're in a job that you don't want to lose and then you kind of have to figure it out. But I wondered if there's enough practice that someday you would feel it came easier on the other side. I am left-handed when it comes to sports. If I'm doing a cartwheel, I'm leading with my left hand.
Huh.
But in my life, I'm right-handed. So I wondered
Yeah.
if there was enough practice that would make it so that if I had to do a cartwheel, I would automatically start right-handed instead of left-handed.
I think you can always develop the weaker side of your body and your brain.
Hmm.
Just doing things that challenge you in new ways. Left brain thinkers can take up creative hobbies like painting or writing. Right brain thinkers can try learning a new language or playing strategy games. Our bodies and our brain are the most amazing things. They're always able to be developed more if we choose to focus on it.
Have you ever worked on that?
I'm very right brained, so if I have to do things that require left brain activity, like balancing the checkbook or doing some kind of logical, rational thinking, I do work at that because it's important to be able to function completely. What about you?
I dabble, and I mean at the barest level, at playing my guitar, ukulele, and banjo. I struggle to learn new skills because once I learn a riff, it's super fun for me to just play that one riff over and over and over again. And I don't know if that's because I just haven't exercised the muscle that it takes to learn, or if that's truly why I just have that hobby, is to be able to play that one thing and feel the joy of playing music. So I don't know that I'm actually working on developing that side of the brain. Yeah, I don't know. I try to draw once in a while.
You're very good at drawing.
Thank you.
You're very artistic. You are creative.
But I need a push. Like my mother-in-law is a trained artist, professional artist. Her creative process is something I'm quite envious of. That she can just start with a blank sheet of paper and channel whatever she's feeling into whatever comes naturally. And that's a freedom that I struggle to allow in myself.
Huh.
So maybe that's a right brain characteristic, is just being okay with what comes and being able to allow yourself to express yourself freely. And
Yeah.
I don't have it.
Because your left brain is kicking in and analyzing it.
Yes.
So, but the important thing is you're aware of that.
Yeah. And I think with coaching, it would become easier.
Sure, it's any way you want to work on something, and coaching will help with that kind of thing too. But the bottom line is whether you're left-brained, right-brained, or somewhere in between, understanding how your brain works can give you greater insight into your personality, your relationships, your career choices. It's not about putting yourself into one category, but it's about understanding your strengths, identifying your challenges, and finding a balance so you can be your best self and claim your personal power and create your perfect life.
Thanks, Mama.
And thank you, Shannon. And thank you to our listeners. We would love to hear your thoughts on this, left-brained or right-brained, either way.
Yes, tell us how you've used that information to better your life or how you've worked to improve one side of your brain over the other if you have. And then if you want to suggest any ideas for future podcasts, we would love that because we want to talk about topics that are pertinent to you. And if you'd love to review our podcast, that would be amazing. And you can do that wherever you stream, or you can just visit us at yourpersonalpowerpod.com, click contact, and drop us an email directly. Also, feel free to visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with your friends and family so they can join in on the fun. And then if you want to learn about coaching, which I highly recommend, it can totally change your life, contact Sandy at insidejobscoach.com. Until next time, find your power and change your life.